Welcome to Donuts and Bikes, the mountain bike coaching podcast. Your hosts are Paul Howard and Kristian Jackson, and we're here to discuss the skills, techniques, and concepts we've used over the last 20 years to improve your riding or coaching. Enjoy the show.
All right. Okay, we're recording. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So this is funny. So Kristian and I were just like doing some preamble talking, and then we were like, we should record this almost like a podcast. So that's what we're doing. We've just hit record, and we're going to jump straight into today's topic, which is basically self-confidence and fear. And Kristian, over to you.
Self-confidence and fear. I'm
too scared to say something, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, well, let's go. All right, so thinking these two concepts as two ends of a theme, right? So it's like an end of a spectrum. We have confidence on one end, and maybe fear on the other. And I was saying before we press record here that I was asked on a PMBI course once about the recommendation we have in some of our literature about participants should be seeking out their own mental training, and what do we recommend for that? What the mental aspect, because it's a huge part of our performance as a rider, and even really, Paul, as a coach as well. Thinking about confidence and fear as a coach, I think the same concepts applied there as they do for the riders that we're working with as well. And so, thinking about that, I was like, well, what if self-confidence, what if we approach that as a skill, the way that position is a skill or braking is a skill? And as maybe it's a subcomponent of the larger category of the mental component of what we do. And in doing that, I went down the line of thought there of what could we do for our riders to help them improve their self-confidence, and in turn, how might that impact our own self-confidence as a coach?
Yeah.
So thinking about that as a starting point, we'll talk through that with some ideas, some examples, and then maybe swing the pendulum to the other side of the fear end of this continuum, and talk through what that might look like. Paul, maybe we'll start with asking the question: Have you ever had any experience with self-confidence as a rider? Maybe.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, it's funny, like, because if I'm running a course and I'm, if I'm the instructor trainer and I'm running a course, obviously you've got to kind of exude this confidence to some extent. Or if I'm coaching a rider, you've got to kind of show that you're confident, because that's a big part of your teaching. Is whoever you're training, you want to show that what you're doing is somewhat comfortable, somewhat easy, because then that will put your student at ease as well. But the reality is we're humans too, and I definitely have struggled with self-confidence and, to some extent, anxiety with my riding the last 2-3 years. I don't know particularly why. There's lots of things going on just in my personal life and in my background. But long story short, yeah, I've really struggled with what I would class as like irrational fear the last couple of years on stuff like, either I know I've ridden before and all of a sudden I don't want to ride it because I'm too scared. And sometimes that's stuff that I've ridden before kind of in my sleep. It's not stuff that used to challenge me, and so therefore it makes sense for me to still be scared of it. It's stuff that's like, yeah, it's kind of tricky, but like I could ride that easily. And I'm like to the point where I'm like avoiding that terrain. I'm not going up there. I'm not riding. And I've even had it on like easy stuff, or if I'm going fast on easy stuff, I'll suddenly just get super tense and I'll slow down again. So it's such an important subject, I think. Self-confidence, fear, they impact everyone. If you think, like, technically speaking, I'm a level 4 instructor trainer. I'm a pretty good coach. I'm a pretty good rider. But I'm feeling that fear and that anxiety just just as much as a beginner might be feeling it. So I think it's a great topic for today. And if Kristian and I can dig into it and help our listeners from our coaching background or our own personal experiences, I think that's the goal for this podcast today, is to see what we can unpack and see if we can help the listeners out there.
Absolutely. I think this subject is again, we'll have many parts to it. And this is kind of our introduction dive into it, which I'm excited about. And I think that a good place to start maybe that with stay focused on that, the self-confidence side, or the actual idea of confidence. And one of the first things that I think about with this is how much of a self-fulfilling aspect confidence has on us. Meaning if we're confident going into a situation, that translates into performance. And if we're not confident going into the situation, that impacts the performance, or maybe makes us choose a different trail, like you're talking about, or not do something completely. Like it's that powerful of an experience. And I remember when I did my level 4, and one of the requirements in there is an hour-long coaching session for your practice teach. And I remember going into the first one lacking self-confidence, and I could feel the lesson unraveling.
Yeah.
as I went.
I could see it.
Yeah. Right. And I remember getting done with it and just like being, a bit, kind of shrunken back from that experience. And, with you and the, other colleagues there, and really having to take the rest of that day and that evening and do some digging, and do some self-talk about, what I was doing on this course. And in the end, jumping back into that, the final teach, coming into it with a bit of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, and having an experience that I was very pleased with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a cool thing to highlight. And I liked the way you said it earlier about the skill. Like, we often think of physical things as things that are fairly easy to change. Like I can get stronger if I lift weights. I can get fitter if I run up hills a lot. And I can get better at jumping if I do a lot of pump track and a lot of dirt jumps. Skills inherently, we as humans, we can feel it, we can see it, we can kind of think, oh yeah, I can change that, I can get better at that. But the psychological factor, this performance factor, the piece of our riding, the psychology of it, it's so much harder for, I think, anyone to understand. How can I improve a psychological or a mental aspect of myself? But the research shows that you can. That's what's so cool about it. Establishing new neural pathways through practice, purposeful practice mentally, it's just as effective as practicing new techniques physically. So that's the good news from the get-go, is if we consider confidence as a skill, and in a way a mental skill, psychological skill, we can dig in, we can break it down, we can improve it. We just have to sort of trust that process is going to work, I guess.
For sure. And I think that process is a really important word there, because I think that we can get into situations, whether, our riders or our coaches ourselves, where we attach self-worth to an outcome, and then self-doubt, becomes part of that situation as well. If I wanted to do well on that first teach, and my confidence was undermined and I wasn't hitting the mark that I wanted to, like, if my self-worth is attached to that outcome of performance, then it's going to negatively impact, the internal goings on here. And so I think one of the first steps with this is learning to detach the process versus the results in the situation, and understanding about the how we're implementing practice towards the process. The results are then what come after. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where, that's straight off the top. That's a great tactic people can start to employ to improve their confidence is where do you weight your focus? And if you're focused on the outcome and you don't achieve it, then bang, that's going to knock your confidence. But if you focus on the process, well, I didn't achieve exactly what I wanted to do, but what did I learn through that process? Well, I learned A and B and C. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't impact your confidence as much. So just straight away, just changing your focus on the types of goal you're setting. Are they outcome goals? Are they process goals? That can help you kind of maintain your confidence through the season. But I think this highlights our first point really of today's podcast, is that confidence is a component of performance. And like any component, it's a skill that we can hopefully try and figure out and hopefully try and improve. So I know for myself, like when I was having some anxiety issues, I found it really hard in the past to be like, how on earth do I fix this? I don't get it. I don't know how to fix this confidence or this anxiety. But sure enough, a bit of research and reading, my background from coaching, seeing a sports psychologist, all of a sudden you get given these tools and you're like, oh, this is just the same. It's like being given drills to fix your cornering. And now you're being given kind of drills per se to fix your confidence, or not necessarily fix it, but to work on it. So it's a skill and it's a component of performance. And I think one thing that's nice to highlight with confidence is maybe if we go through, Kristian, like what are some things we often see when people are confident? Like what are some sort of common traits or markers when we see a confident person either performing on a bike or maybe at home in a job? Like what are some characters or traits we see from those confident performers?
Yeah, I think one of the first things we see is that they're happy.
Yeah.
That there's a level of enjoyment or excitement to what they're doing. There's a sense of optimism, a feeling that you can succeed and that you have the power to do that, which I think kind of speaks about where the individual sense of control is coming from. There's some sort of intrinsic motivation, an intrinsic sense of purpose. They have the ability to influence the situation.
Yeah. I think that's a big one. Like, I think that's important, is that the confident people feel like they're in charge.
Yeah.
For better or worse, they're in charge of the outcome. I like that one. What else?
So I talked about optimism, in feeling like you can engage. There's a bit of if you're a coach observing a rider, or if you're out riding with your buddies, you can see it in someone's face. There's a relaxation of the muscles in the face, smiling. These kind of things are relatively obvious when we see this. I think. What about you? What are some other things you might add to that list?
Well, I like the idea that like confident people don't care as much about the outcome.
Okay. Yeah.
Like win or lose, they're like, whatever. It's not going to impact me. Like they're more resilient, so they don't put their self-worth or their self-value in riding it or not riding it, or succeeding there or not succeeding there. They're less focused or less concerned about the outcome. But also I think confident people are a little bit more long-term focused. Their view is a little broader, it's a little wider. It's not so short-term, it's not so narrow. And I think that's where that resilience comes in, is, well, I had a horrible race today. It sucks. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but it's not because of me. It's just some bad luck. Or maybe it was because of me. And you know what? I didn't train hard enough. And so I had a bad race. Easy to fix. I just got to train harder. So it's like, doesn't matter whether things go right or wrong. They don't necessarily internalize it or beat themselves up as much, because a lot of the time they'll see the bigger picture. So, well, you know what? I've got 6 races left. Let's let's keep pushing. I'll make sure I do more work for the next race so that bad luck doesn't creep in, and make sure I'll train a bit harder. Or even if it's at work, maybe they fail at a project and then like, you know what, it's May. I've still got half the year left. So let's just pull it together and keep going. So I think being realistic with outcomes is key. And are you letting that outcome impact you or not? And if you think conversely, like people with a lack of confidence, well, if they get a hit, it really shakes them. If something happens they weren't expecting, it shakes them. If they get a poor result, they really internalize it. They really focus on it rather than thinking, well, it's just one result. You can move past it. You can get a good result next time. I think another huge thing with confidence is self-belief, which is a bigger topic. And self-belief is a really difficult thing to address short term. You can't just turn around and say to someone, believe in yourself.
Right.
You're like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that's what I was missing. I'll just believe in myself. Like, you can't say that, but it's such an integral part of confidence, but it's also something that takes a long time, that sort of self-esteem, that self-belief. Yeah. It takes a long time to develop that.
Well, that's an accumulation of a past history, of results.
Yeah.
Right. And so that belief, or the value in your own abilities comes from a track record.
Yeah.
Of success. I like this idea of short-term, long-term approach to things. And you mentioned some racing analogies there. And I think there's a sense of that in talking about specific features as well. Sometimes we'll get riders that will get kind of have one feature that looms large in their heads, and they want to do it and get it over with, and because they're there at that moment, they feel the pressure to do that. And the confident person could, like you said, kind of take it or leave it. They're comfortable walking away from it, doing it a different day, whatever. But I think that splitting it into the short-term, long-term expectations can be a helpful tool in using this approach.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a tool that helps. And I think understanding like also the amount of confidence, like self-confidence is important, but also understanding like the pros and cons. Like lack of confidence doesn't always have to be a negative. And that's something I often talk to my riders about or students about. If they're not feeling this drop, or if they're not feeling confident today, or they're just not feeling on it today, you know what? That's good, because that's your brain telling you what you're about to do is risky. That's something I learned from sports psychologists last year. It's like that moment where you're standing above that sketchy rock line, or I don't know, a new gap jump, and you're standing there and you're doubting yourself. You're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I putting myself through this? This is scary. I'm scared. Well, just know that maybe in that moment in time, that's good. That's your brain saying, and that's inherent to all of us. It's your brain's natural mechanism to tell you when there is danger, when there is risk. That's how you stay alive. So for a moment, take a breath and just tell yourself, like, you know what? It's good that I'm feeling a lack of confidence, that it's not all bad. It's telling me I need to focus. It's telling me I need to prepare. And so what I think helps sometimes is quantifying that confidence. Is it a complete lack of confidence where I'm so scared, or I just have no self-belief that if I try this thing, it's just going to go horribly wrong? Or is it just a little bit of a lack of confidence? Is it a little bit of fear that actually I can use that can just make me sharpen? It can make me focus. It can make me make better decisions. Am I ready? Am I not ready? Too much fear. I'm not ready. I need to go and do more homework. I need to come back to this rock roll in a few weeks' time and build up to it and do some smaller rock roll. I need to do more homework. I need to do more skills training. Or maybe it's just a little bit of lack of confidence, a little bit of fear. And then maybe like, you know what? It's good. I'm ready. I've done my homework. I've done all my skills training. I'm just scared because there is risk, but I'm not scared because I can't do it. And that's where quantifying your confidence, I think, can help your decisions. And that's really helped me. Is sometimes I've been up there and I'm like, I'm scared because this is scary, because it's gnarly, but I'm not scared because I can't do it. So
Right.
that, and then there's
Yeah.
sometimes where I'm like, I'm scared because this is gnarly, and I'm scared because like, I might screw this up. I don't have that full self-belief that I'm not going to make a mistake. So that's when I kind of back down.
Yeah. I think that idea of quantifying is good. Let's expand that a bit, because confidence, fear, risk, excitement, all of those words kind of, live in a similar place, where we are experiencing those oftentimes emotionally. We're experiencing, fear can be real and present, or it can be, something that's not real, but it's something that we're experiencing emotionally. And so a good starting point to add on to the quantification is the idea of naming the feelings that we're experiencing in that moment. Naming that, this rock roll is gnarly.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like naming it, and then the next step is naming how you feel about it. The physiology between fear and excitement, relatively the same thing. Like just the heart rate increasing, blood pressure increasing, all of this. And so really looking through that, naming how we're feeling in that moment. I feel excited. I feel nervous.
Yeah.
I feel whatever it is. It may be I'm too overcome with fear at this point to deal with it. I need to back down. But I think for me, my experience with both writing and coaching, that idea of putting a name on something helps me then deal with what it is and put it in its place. Because some of the times the fears become so phantom that we get lost in the thoughts about them, and those thoughts then create this self-talk that becomes overwhelming and causes us to lose focus. And so being able to name those things then helps me differentiate between what is real and what isn't.
Yeah, I like that, because it sort of goes along the lines of quantifying it too. Like if you identify your feelings, like I'm excited, I'm a little bit nervous, I feel alive, I feel energetic, like I kind of feel pumped, a little bit like I've had too much caffeine. Like it's a healthy excitement. Then chances are that's like, okay, I think I'm good to go. Like I'm nervous, there's a bit of fear, but I'm reacting to it in a positive way. Versus like, if I label things, identify feelings, like I feel sick for my stomach. That feeling where you're like, everyone's hit that road gap and you haven't, and you're like, I kind of feel sick in my stomach. I feel like I want to crawl in a hole. I am super nervous. Just putting those labels, I think, will just help you. Oh, okay, this is a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Shall I do it? Shall I not do it? It helps you make those decisions. And I think that self-talk is a key one. I love that. I was told recently, like, tell yourself that you're worthy and you've done the work and you're going to shred. You're going to rip it a new one. I've been in situations where you're scared of something, you don't have that confidence, but you can talk yourself into it. Like, you know what? I've done the work. I'm worthy. I'm meant to be here, and I'm going to shred this. And you can believe in yourself. Okay, I can talk myself into it. On the other hand, sometimes I've like stood above something. There's a particular section on like a techie trail up behind my house that I've only ridden a handful of times, and it just gives me the willies for some reason. I don't know why. But I was out there last summer, and I couldn't talk myself into it. I was like, I know I'm worthy to be here. I have the skill. I've done the work, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to shred this. And it doesn't matter what I said to myself. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So that self-talk was important. I find that as a useful tool. It's like, if the self-talk works fairly easily, then I know I'm good to go. If I'm trying to like convince myself of the self-talk, chances are I'm probably not good to go.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want to learn more about us, please check out our first episode, which digs into who we are, what we do, and our background in coaching and mountain bike industry. You can also check us out on Instagram at Donuts and Bikes, or at our podcast, the Mountain Bike Coaching Podcast.buzzsprout.com. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I would add, there's another element to self-talk in there as well, as the inner critic.
Yeah.
That can wreak havoc as well. You might be trying to psych yourself up to the, whatever the trail feature, and that there's a little nagging critic in there of, well, you didn't do it last time, and you didn't do it the time before last.
That nagging, I hate that nagging critic.
You got to put that guy on the shelf.
Yeah, he's always on my shoulder, and I just want to flick him in the face. I hate that guy. That's one of my issues. Is some of my experiences lately with the sports psychology was saying, like, the high functioning / intelligent people will often overanalyze things, and they'll, to the point where they'll often play out in their mind all the things that could go wrong.
Right.
Because it's really their way of problem solving. Here's a task. Here's all the things I need to do for it. Here's all the things that will be the outcome if I succeed. But also, here's all the 50 different ways it could go wrong. So he's kind of talking to me about, like, in a way, trying to shut that down a little bit, because it's not helping you, and it's not necessarily rational, but also recognizing that it's not bad as well. Like, it's not bad to have that extra awareness of the things that could go wrong, because chances are it's going to make your training up until that point more effective. Like, we've got some really nice notes here that you prepared, like engaging in quality practice. We talk about this a lot on our podcast, like purposeful practice, and set realistic goals, and visualization. Like, these are all tools that will help the rider feel success through the long term. And that's what you talked about earlier, about, like, partly your confidence is based on your history of success. So if you can just continue to sort of have purposeful practice, ride smart, make good decisions, create that history of smooth, successful riding, chances are over time, in the long term, your brain will start to figure out the positive solutions more than trying to figure out all the things that could go wrong. Can you kind of connect with that? Like, does that remind you of something maybe you've experienced in the past?
It does. And it makes me, I just lost my thought.
Too scared.
Yeah, yeah.
Too much pressure. There's all the fear.
Oh, I was thinking through something. Maybe it'll come back to me. But I was thinking a steep rock roll, for instance. Oh, I got it. I'm back.
It's back.
One of the pieces I think is important with this, with confidence, with fear, is to put that in context of what we're doing. And we're mountain biking, we're skiing, we're snowboarding, climbing. The adventure sports world, is risk is an inherent part of what we do. and because I was thinking, you're talking about the thinking through the negative outcomes, and I've been there before too, looking down something steep and seeing that route's going to push me this way, and if it does, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so that inner critic, can start nagging about those things. You're going to mess this up, whatever. But like stepping back and saying, well, what's the motivation to do this? Like, what am I doing here? I'm riding a bike. Yeah. But I'm taking a purposeful risk in order to gain something.
Yeah.
Right. There's a positive correlation to risk as well as a negative correlation. And I think part of what we're doing here in this conversation is, trying to almost build a rubric around, how to engage purposefully and successfully with these risk activities. And the purposeful practice to me really resonates well. And, one of the drills that we do for steep rock rolls is, engaging our front brake and learning how to use the front brake. And one of the part of that lesson is finding a short rock roll to engage that front brake and creeping down it as slowly as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And that, we do that on the courses, and I do that with myself, getting back into the season. And one of the things that I note with that is when you do that and what you're practicing isn't just the braking and the position, but you're practicing getting in the right mental space.
Yeah.
Over like an extended length of time, like that sensation of being almost stopped on a steep rock roll, looking straight down, like, in some cases, your mind's like, this shouldn't make any sense. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But you're giving yourself a moment to practice that mindset of I'm looking straight down.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay because I've got the skills and I'm practicing the skills.
It's like you're reminding yourself, like, you're meant to be there. Right?
Exactly.
Right. I'm meant to be here. That this is my skill set. This is my terrain. Like this is my normal.
That's a great phrase. I love that.
Yeah.
You're meant to be here.
You're meant to be here.
Yeah.
You didn't get there by mistake.
Right. But
what am I doing here?
At those moments too, though. but typically when those moments come, it's because the purposeful practice hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And like you said in one of the earlier podcasts, if you're scared, you feel the butterflies, there's a chance that you're in that terrain too soon.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if I'm having that experience, then there's some steps that I might have skipped or hadn't practiced thoroughly enough.
Yeah.
And I may need to, paradoxically go back in order to progress forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's where some riders can really appear confident because first of all, they're riding a lot. So inherently they're having a lot more mileage, a lot more time, a lot more hours to do that quality practice, to feel success. And then inherently, if you do something a lot and you do it well, obviously you're going to start to feel more confident, right? When the confidence matters is when you're challenging yourself. So right. I think that's the thing is for intermediate advanced riders, they tend to plateau because they get more comfortable with being comfortable because they can ride more terrain at a greater variety of speed more of the time without really getting into that spectrum of, oh crap, this is scary. Like you can ride the whole year and probably not scare yourself unless you really wanted to. So that's literally why intermediate advanced riders kind of plateau is they just get comfortable with being comfortable, and then they get really uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's definitely my issue, especially as a mountain bike coach. Like you spend so much time on the bike riding terrain that's somewhat easy for you or easier for you at speeds that are quite comfortable for you. And then you suddenly go on a social ride with buddies and you're on some gnarly terrain that you haven't ridden for a month, or you're riding in a speed that you haven't ridden at for a while. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I am not meant to be here. This is not my normal. This is not what I'm used to. And then all of a sudden, that's where the lack of confidence or the fear starts to kick in. And I think it's important for riders to notice that again, like that's good. That's your brain saying, hang on a minute, there's some risk here. You've got to focus. So I think a good place to start is just reminding everyone that the lack of confidence isn't always a bad thing. And it helps you evaluate the situation. It helps you evaluate the performance that you need. And one tool I like too is if I'm in a situation where I'm feeling a bit stressed or not as confident as I want to be, is I try and visualize the success. So this is another tool that can help me with my confidence. So if I can stand on top of something or whatever it is, even if it's like a technical climb, and I'm like, I can see what I need to do to get up this and not fall off the back or not fall over that side bench into the river down there. Like it's a techie climb. If I can see success, then usually I can be stressed. I might be a bit scared. I might not have 100% confidence. But if I can visualize the success, usually I'm good to go. If I can't visualize success, or I'm trying to visualize success and all the what ifs creep in, like I start to visualize, oh, what if I fall off there? Or, what if I make a mistake there? And I start visualizing, excuse me, all the negative outcomes. That's a great tool to help me decide, should I do it today or should I not do it today? And I think that's a really important thing that maybe we could highlight and unpack is a lack of confidence comes from there's a task in front of you and it's challenging you. And so you might have a bit of anxiety or a bit of fear. And it's important just to take a second and just to ask, do you need to do this? Like, are you getting paid? Like, is someone going to give you $1,000 check for hitting that jump? No. I mean, unless you're a pro rider. No, like unless you're a pro rider and you're literally getting paid to ride, like why are you putting your pressure on yourself? Do you even need to put your pressure on yourself? Do you need to hit that today? There's some things where I've just felt super anxious and I've just said, whatever. But I just don't care. I don't need to do it today. I just went around it, or I just went home, or whatever. We always put pressure on ourselves to feel like, well, I'm there. It's in front of me. Do I need to do it? And this is why a lot of newer riders will often have injuries, and especially kids that don't have the right guidance or the coaching, is they'll feel this pressure to do it now, today. That's made up. You're making that shit up. There's no pressure to do it. And as soon as you realize that, you kind of like all the fear kind of goes away. It's like, I don't need to do it. All right, well, I'll just ride around it. Guess what that gives you? That gives you time. One of the best tools to build your confidence is time. Just mileage, good mileage, quality practice, focusing on the process more than the outcome. And just time, and your skill set will build, your fitness and strength will build. And then maybe in a month later, you're on that same trail. Oh, I just rode it. Didn't even think about it. Or maybe I stopped and took a peek. You visualized it. Yeah, I can see how to do that. Okay, I'll jump in. Let's go. So I think, self-confidence and fear, and if the fear kicks in, sometimes we forget to ask ourselves, like, you're scared. Okay, cool. But do we even need to do it? Like,
I think
not a big deal.
Yeah, I think that speaks to our motivation to do, the drop or the roll or whatever it is. What's motivating us to do it. And with kids, there's often the peer pressure.
Absolutely.
And that fear of being seen in a specific way. Can be one of those phantom fears that kind of creeps in. And one of the things I would add to this part of the conversation was that one of the outcomes. Well, we talk about process versus outcomes, and I think another layer to that is learning.
Yeah,
and being comfortable that not only are we putting energy into a process, but that we're going to learn from this. And when we approach, a situation in a confidence kind of situation with that idea of we're going to learn from it, then that can diffuse, I think, when we might not have the confidence, saying, well, I'm learning something from this.
Yeah. There's still a positive to take away.
Yeah.
You're still getting better in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
And that we have to honor all of the steps to the process, including the practice
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. I like what you wrote here, like false evidence appearing real. Phantom fears.
False evidence appearing real. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard something similar to that recently. Maybe I read it. Well, I was reading a coaching book. I can't remember where I saw that. But yeah, I love that, because that's so common, right? All the what ifs and even the social pressures that you mentioned. Like sometimes it's fear of failure because I just don't want to crash, right?
Yeah.
And get hurt. Sometimes it's fear of embarrassment because your friends are there and you don't want to be the one that rides around it. But again, all of those social pressures, they're perceived pressure. They're not real. I always talk about real versus perceived. And a lot of the time, you could probably argue that they're perceived pressures. But then if you actually ask your friends, like, can I just ride around this? I'm like, yeah, no worries. But there's this perceived social pressure that like, oh, if I don't ride around this, I'm going to look stupid. But most of the time, it's not real. You're just making that up. And kids are pretty bad for that too. Like they definitely fall into that trap. And the other one with kids is fear of letting others down. Because a lot of the time with kids, they're extrinsically motivated. So they want that approval from the mum, dad, the older sibling, the coach, and they're kind of worried that if they don't do it, they're gonna let someone down, or that the parent might feel disappointed, and that is, again, as soon as that sort of fear or lack of confidence comes in, we know that that's going to impact that performance. So if we rewind back to the start of the podcast, like, if you want to perform well, confidence is a key factor. You're going to move better. You're not going to overanalyze. Like we talk about it on the level 4 skills coaching course. Like reinvestment is a key outcome of too much fear or not enough confidence at a critical moment. And reinvestment is basically just the conscious act of thinking about something that's usually unconscious. So usually it's autonomous. But as soon as you consciously think about something, especially in a sport like mountain biking, where it's biomechanical, it's technical, as soon as you start thinking about how to move, thinking about when to turn your hips or when or how much you are braking, the very fact that you're thinking about it, it will slow it down. It will make it more awkward. You will ride less. So that reinvestment is really just an outcome of too much fear or not enough confidence, and sometimes those fears are just being put on because you're perceiving something that doesn't exist. People don't care if you ride around it. People don't care if you don't do it. Like, just get rid of that. Like, sometimes it's internal too. Like, I have a lot of pride just with my, our career, right? Like you and I, we've been riding and coaching for 20 years. It gets to the point where like you have your own expectations. Like you stand on a certain section of trail and you're like, right, if I don't ride this, then like,
what's the point?
This is ridiculous. I'm just getting worse. Or like, am I just getting old and useless? Like, you have that certain pride where like, I've ridden stuff harder than this. Why am I scared about this today? And I think a good response to that is like, we all get older, but that's not the point. The point is we all have good and bad days. And a 20-year-old kid can have a good and bad day. Just because you're standing there at 44 and you're freaking out about something you've written before, it doesn't mean you're getting worse. It just means you're having a bad day.
You know, that makes me think about the impact of us as writers, as coaches, seeing a lot of media content around pro writers at their doing exactly the right thing always at exactly the right time, and creating these expectations for us as writers that we always have to be performing that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like when we're, jump on YouTube and use, anybody's videos that they've posted, they're absolutely just on point on this. And then we can get build up a frustration when we're having a bad day. I feel it, when things aren't clicking, it's whatever, I'm tired, and then I hear that again, that inner critic, like, well, you should be able to do this. You're level 4, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This should be second nature.
You're Christian Jackson, you're the boss, man. You should be doing this.
Exactly. That's exactly what that voice says. With your accent though. But yeah, I mean, I think that being able to relax and understand that, like, we're not always at our best.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things I talk a lot about with my kids a little bit, and my coaches too, actually, is be kind. And it's one of our core coaching principles in ZEP, actually, is be kind. And what that means is, in a writing context, is be kind to yourself. If you're stressed that you're not writing well today, or you don't feel like writing that bridge, but everybody else wrote that bridge, and you're getting all stressed, like, just be kind to yourself. Like, why? Don't put that pressure on yourself. Like, the best person to help you feel better is yourself. Take that pressure away. It's a perceived expectation. It's not a real expectation. And just be kind to yourself. You're not feeling it that day, don't beat yourself up. It's not because you're getting old and rubbish and you just need to retire. You're just having a bad day. Be kind to yourself. And it's that sort of that positive self-talk, really. And it's funny because what am I now? I don't know how old I am. 44, 3, something like that. That sounds good. But I'm writing better than I think I ever have. I know it. I know I'm smoother. I'm more skilled. I'm a better writer than I ever have. But I do have more issues these days with confidence and anxiety. But so what I'm trying to do is just do exactly that. Be more kind to myself, not get so wound up, not get so stressed if I'm having a bad day. And in the long run, what that does is it creates a pattern of behavior. And this is key. If you're trying to change your mental approach to something, you need to change the pattern of behavior. And you can't do that without tactics. So, if let's say, this is a classic one. The kids are watching TV and you turn the TV off and then they have a tantrum. So if you don't address that, they will always have a tantrum when you turn the TV off. That's just the way it is. So you've got to come up with some tools or tactics so that mental reaction changes. And it's no difference here. If every time you get to a section of trail and you're scared, you react in the same way, you freeze up, you get scared, and you just walk around it. If you create a habit out of that, you will start to create that neural pathway, and that your mind and your body will always react in the same way. So at some point, you need to create a disconnect. You need to be aware of how you react to things, and then purposefully practice changing it. So maybe next time you ride up to a section and you're scared, maybe take a breath, maybe talk to yourself and be kind. You know what? I'm a little bit scared, but actually I can do this. I'm supposed to be here. I'm worthy of this. But I'm not going to ride it today, but I might ride it tomorrow. So you might still end up not riding it, but you've actually started to react to it differently. And then maybe the second or third time you get there and you've practiced keeping calm, not letting the fears get the best of you, not letting the irrational thoughts come in. Maybe you've practiced visualizing success instead of visualizing failure. Maybe the second or third time, by the time you get there, your automatic reaction isn't, I'm scared, I'm getting off, I'm walking around it. You're purposefully trying different mental tactics to react differently. And just like anything else, just like, if you want to improve your body position, you've got to start trying different things. You've got to stand on the bike differently. If you don't change how you're standing on the bike, you're probably not going to change or improve your body position. It's no different to how you deal with fear or anxiety or confidence. Be aware of what you are currently doing. How are you currently reacting? And then try and change it. Can't change it all at once. That's a bit silly. Set yourself realistic expectations, but start trying to change little pieces time after time. And then maybe over 6 months, you start to turn into this, yes, I can ride her, rather than no, I can't ride her.
Yeah, for sure. I like that, the idea about change. We've mentioned that in previous episodes. Learning is about change, and thinking through how to take the small steps to do that. Let's switch gears for a second, Paul, and maybe talk about some of this from a coach's perspective, working with riders. We've been kind of talking about it from the rider's perspective, but as you're talking, I was thinking about, what if we are working with our rider that is experiencing a lack of confidence? What are some things that we might do as a coach to help them? Yeah. And I think, this is maybe as a starting point here. I've been in situations where I've had numerous students, a small group, and you always have a spectrum of skill sets with a small group, and some will be out front and some will be in the back, and one strategy with is if somebody is always in the back, the same person's always in the back. Maybe I'll ride in the back as well.
Yeah.
And spend time with that person, talking to them, and maybe just start the connection part there, so that it's not me, the instructor or the guide, that's up front shredding with the shredders all the time, and kind of just consciously, purposely, putting myself in a different scenario.
And we'll get right back to the show. But before we do, we just wanted to say thanks to all the listeners so far and for all your support. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please help us spread the word by sharing our podcast on Instagram, Facebook, or all the usual social media channels. Thanks again, everyone, and we hope you're enjoying the show. Let's get back to it.
What about you? What kinds of tactics have you used?
I think that the fundamental tactic any coach can use is the human connection. It's connecting with each individual student so you can relate to them and identify, for this human in front of you right now, what are the things that set them off? What are the factors that either help their confidence or hinder their confidence? There'll be some riders, for example, where if you show them a really cool demo, it will inspire them. They'll get pumped, like, oh my God, that was sick. I want to try and follow him and do what he does. There'll be other students where you show them a really cool demo and it will intimidate them, and they'll actually shut down and they won't feel valued or heard or listened to, because they just feel like the coach is showing off, essentially. Even though you're not doing that, that's not your intention. That's how it was perceived. So people skills is at the heart of dealing with and assisting with the psychological component of mountain biking. Getting into your student's brain is key, and understanding how their brain, how their mind, how their personality works is key, because if the more in tune you are with that, the more you can help them, or if you're not in tune, you're going to hinder them. So that's a trickier one in some ways, because people skills, that's something you develop over a lifetime. But some things that help in the short term is just when you're getting to know your students in the first part of the lesson. I mean, that's probably the simplest and easiest thing you can do is don't rush that introduction and meet and greet and warm up. Just spend time, talk to them about life, talk to them about sports or family or friends, films, movies, food. Get to know them, because it's not that you really want to know what their favorite movie is or what their favorite music is. Like, you don't really care. But it's an opportunity for you to see how they respond to questions, how they respond to conversation. It's an opportunity for you to dig into their personality. Are they outgoing? Are they extrovert, introvert? Are they confident, nervous, anxious, excited? All of those things you talked about at the start, like trying to label your feelings when you come into a stressful situation. Like, am I nervous? Am I excited? Am I scared? The coach has to try and do that for the student. Are they excited? Are they scared? Are they confident? Are they going to respond to an extrovert coach better than kind of an introvert coach? There'll be some students I work with where straight away, I was coaching a session on Whistle Blackcomb yesterday. It was a yearning for turning snowboard session. We did 7 women, 1 dude. Such a fun session. And I really gained a sense that for that particular group, with some of the girls in the group, they responded really well to just dynamic demos, like really strong, fast, dynamic demos, to try and inspire them to almost show them that, like, look, if you get on the heel edge and you drop your hips really quickly on this particular drill, you might happen to slide out on your backside, but look, you can do it and you're going to be fine. So I kind of went towards more of like an aggressive, outgoing demonstration rather than something a little more subtle and less intimidating. So that's just one example of like cueing into my students, getting to know their personalities, getting to know their goals, and gaining a sense that, like, in that part of my lesson, the visual part of my lesson, I was more outgoing and trying to show a really dynamic example of what to do. But then in other parts of my lesson, I kind of rounded it off by just being sort of a little more mellow, a little more quiet, because that's where I think a good coach can really help. Is a good coach has range. If I'm really sort of confident and outgoing in this piece of my lesson, maybe I'll be a little more mellow and calm in this piece of my lesson to give an overall approach that best fits my student and gets them in the right mental place. And often confidence and fear and inspiration and intimidation, you can kind of think of these, they're all on a sliding scale. And as a coach, you're trying to just constantly feather the needle between confidence and inspiring, and maybe dipping a little bit in towards the fear to get them to focus a little bit. You're constantly just being aware of where that needle is. And then you're either dialing things down or dialing things up, or having a crack and having a laugh to get them to relax, or being a little more serious or technical to get them to focus. And so much of that is reading your student, reading where they're at mentally, and then reacting to what you do. Did that help or hinder? Or, you know what, they're shutting down a little bit. This isn't helping. I'm going to have to change tactics to open them up, or vice versa. Like, they're all having fun. They're probably having a bit too much fun. No one's really focused. No one's actually getting better at the moment. We need to change tactics a little bit. Maybe I need to do something to actually increase a bit of fear and intimidation to actually get them to focus for a bit. And then I can go back to a different teaching style. So a bit of a long-winded answer, I know, but I think it all starts with just connecting with that human in front of you and trying to know what's going on in their head.
Well, Paul, that's really, really cool stuff there. And maybe I jotted down a few notes here that I wanted to touch on. We mentioned at the beginning that confidence begets confidence, and vice versa, right? And as you were talking about leading this group of snowboarders, and hearing you say, I'm going to show them a really good dynamic demo to inspire them, right? That I've been there in that situation, and I know many other listeners have as well, where they've seen somebody they look up to, or they've hired or whatever, just absolutely nail something, and they're like, that was so cool, I want to do that, right? And so I think, to add this idea of confidence begetting confidence in ourselves, I think maybe we add to that, confidence is contagious.
Yeah.
If the coach, again, back from a coach's point of view, if we're coming into the situation confident and showing some confidence, that could inspire, our participants, our riders to find their own confidence, right?
Yeah.
Have that experience. To add on to this, this idea of the people skills, to me, is a really important layer here. And what that made me remember, from one of my university classes that I teach, is the idea of assertiveness. And assertiveness is a concept that often gets associated with, incorrectly associated with, like, arrogance, of being overconfident. And what surprises most people, the students that I train in this leadership class about assertiveness is when you have a high level of respect for yourself and a high level of respect for others. Like, when those two things meet on an XY chart, like, that's assertiveness. And I think that's what you're talking about here with confidence as well, is that.
So would you say then overconfidence is where you obviously respect yourself, but you don't necessarily have respect for the others?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And being passive would be low respect for self, low respect for others. Right.
Yeah.
But you could also, in this situation, in a mountain biking context, maybe even put the terrain in there as the other. Respecting yourself and respecting the terrain, having a high respect for both, can lead to confidence, and having an accurate understanding of the terrain. Would be important. But back to the people part of this, that be kind to yourself, attitude, and layering that in with, showing, being inspiring, I think is contagious. I think the more that we can role model that as coaches, to our participants, our students, the more they see it and pick up on it, and add to that, adding a lot of things. This list is getting long. Add to that's a long-term thing, right? It's something that's not going to happen in one session, or even over a week, but it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point, because I think coaching really is planting seeds, and a good coach plants seeds that grows quicker, basically, and they plant more seeds. You could go down a rabbit hole of seed analogies.
Right.
But anyway, because you plant a seed, and hopefully they go away and they grow. But I back to that, like, confidence thing with, for example, for demos that we were talking about, like, sometimes a good way of looking at it is the perception from the student. So, like, I could be confident in my demo or my explanation or whatever it is in my lesson, but if they start to perceive that I'm overconfident, that's where they can shut down.
Totally.
So I've been in a scenario where, like, I'll do a confident demo because I'm trying to inspire someone, because I think, they're pretty cool. They seem like a resilient personality, pretty confident personality. They're quite confident in this social group. And I don't know, a corner or something, I'll do a demo, and or I'll get them to ride behind me. And then slowly I'll start to see that actually they're withdrawing. They're getting a little quieter. Their faces aren't as happy. And I start to see that, like, actually my confidence is now perceived as overconfidence. And now I'm coming across as sort of showing off.
Right.
And that, especially for group students that like to learn in social settings and students that are more aware of failure or success in a social setting, they can be really intimidated by that. So then I have to change my approach to, okay, I need to just tone down my confidence so that they perceive it as just me being confident, not me being overconfident. And as soon as I always try and match my students, right? So if they're really confident, I'll be a little more outgoing. If they're a little less confident, sometimes I'll be a little bit more introvert and a little quieter. Because if you can match your student personality a little bit, it just helps you connect. It helps you relate. If you think of like a really shy person and a really confident person trying to get along, it's a bit of an awkward dynamic. And I've seen that in coaches before. They've obviously got a really quiet client, maybe quiet kids. And then the coach is just, well, I'm really outgoing and I've got this really booming, loud voice. And it doesn't help them connect with that shy or that quiet or that more introvert student. And so because of that, it's harder for the coach to read things, read their fear, read their anxiety, read their stress. So one tool I always try and do is, to some extent, whilst I'm trying to be confident, obviously, as a coach, is I try and match that extrovertness or that confidence or that quietness of my group or of my students. And then that way we create that connection. And then hopefully that's where I can tune in. It's all about tuning in. Can I tune into the mind of my student and figure out what style of teaching is going to suit them best? Is this a student that needs easier terrain, lots of mileage on easier terrain to build their confidence? Or is this a student that needs to be taken to some hard terrain and shown that they can do it and coach them through it and get them to do it? And then they'll be confident because they're riding what they know they can ride. So that's huge. What might make one rider confident could completely freak out another rider. And it's all down to whether you can connect with that student. And it's the same for fear. What might scare one rider might completely not scare another rider. But I don't know that until I try certain things. And I don't know that unless I can connect with that student. And I mean, coaches listening or riders listening, you've probably been in scenarios where you're like, maybe your friend is, you're riding and your friend kind of freaks out and it's really unexpected. And you're like, why are they freaking out today? Well, you've missed something. You've missed a connection there. Or with your students, if they don't have confidence one day and you're like, oh, you just need to be more confident. Why aren't you confident? I hear that quite a bit in coaching. Like, just be more confident. You can do this.
Right.
That doesn't help the person listening to you, because you're just telling them the obvious. Oh, okay, I need to be more confident. Yeah, thanks, brainy. Like, clearly I need to be more confident. I can do this. I know I can do this, but you're not helping me. So yeah, you could do a whole degree in sports psychology and more to dig into confidence and fear and anxiety. But hopefully some of these discussion points today have helped at least maybe plant the seed. There we go.
Hey, I think it's a good place to maybe wrap this one up, bring it to a close.
I think so. Yeah. I don't know. How long have we been waffling on for?
I think over an hour.
Okay, cool.
Good. Yeah.
That sounds good. That's about podcast length.
Yeah. I think we can stop here soon. I get on with it, but this was fun. This was fun.
Yeah.
Excited to see what our listeners think about this.
I was just thinking that, I'd love for the listeners to either ask questions or make comments. I definitely feel like confidence and fear is a topic that we could do a couple rounds of this. We could do 2 or 3 episodes on confidence and fear, because it's such a big topic and there's so much to unpack. And hopefully today was a good start to that.
Cool. Donuts.
Donuts.
I've got a donut for us.
Yeah, cool.
We have a local shop here in Boone. It's called Local Lion, and it's a wonderful little shop. It was the first donut shop we had in Boone, and it's been around for I think 7 or 10 years now. But they make old fashioned donuts one at a time, and they use a potato flour, so it's a real dense.
I've heard about these. I don't know if I've had one, but I've heard about them.
So they're pretty relatively basic. So they're not like your was it Death by Donuts, Deadly Donuts,
Deadly Donuts, yeah,
donuts, or
good.
Yeah, but they make a Bavarian cream that my Silas always gets every time we go there. He wants Bavarian cream. They're really good. But my go-to donut there is a simple chocolate glazed.
Oh yeah,
right after they've made it, Ooh. So it's just it's still warm, and the chocolate they make a really thick icing, and and they're big enough donuts where like you eat one and you feel pretty good, but you definitely know after one that two would probably be too many.
I felt bad the other week. I was like, I shouldn't have told them I had 3 donuts, but I was like, well. It just happened. When they're that good, you just can't help it.
Yeah. Yes, I was there yesterday morning having that donut and saw 2 bike packers come in, and I'm like, I wonder if I know these guys. And it's 2, one guy that used to live here and a guy from Brevard, and they were riding from Damascus, Virginia, all the way to South Carolina. And stopped in at Local Lion to get fueled up yesterday morning. So it's kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. What's this place called?
Local Lion.
Local Lion. All right. Lion. We'll see if we can dig them up on the old Instagram page. All right, Paul, this has been fun. Sweet. Yeah, good times, man. Yeah, I hope everybody's enjoyed this conversation. About confidence and fear. Hopefully you learned something from this from a writer's perspective or a coach. I guess this one was a little science. And we'd like to say a little bit. Yeah, we like to say that riding bikes isn't rocket science, but this was a little sciencey. Yeah. It's like psychology. So stay safe, ride smart, have fun, and eat a donut, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show and that it sparked some ideas for your writing and your coaching. As always, our approach to coaching is on pros and cons, not rights and wrongs. And with that in mind, our podcast is meant to be more of a conversation about topics and techniques rather than a final say in how to ride or how to teach. As always, please take care if using or applying any of the techniques discussed in this podcast. Stay safe, ride smart, and we'll see you next time.